Welcome to A Brief Pause, a pet podcast where we talk about all things pet related. This season, mostly dog related. And we're talking to the famous Cliff Faver, a top dermatologist and international speaker. This is a continuation of a season-long conversation. So please check out the other episodes, and especially the first episode for his full, amazing bio. This episode, we're talking about skin problems, so all the gross lumps, bumps, and ooey-gooeys, and all these things that groomers do find when they're looking at your dog, but from the advice of a veterinarian.
One of the things that we run into is a lot of those sores that we've taken for granted in years gone by are MRSA or MRSP, which are drug resistant. So now you're putting your health and well-being at a risk on that. And, you can't just look at a wound and say, yeah, that's what's going on. And I sometimes slap my profession that we don't culture enough of these because a lot of times we miss them also. But at least the liability comes on the veterinarian versus you if you made the choice to move forward in that case. So
yeah, definitely skin stuff, which happens to be your specialty in particular. But when dogs come in with pretty extreme skin conditions, you don't know necessarily as a groomer because you're not looking at it under a microscope. Is this infectious? Can this hurt you? Can this hurt other dogs in the salon? But also those dogs need, the owners can be sent home with, say, a prescription shampoo they're supposed to be using once a week. And so they'll come to you and say, can you do this? And so that's one of those gray areas that groomers can get stuck in the middle of trying to help and trying to execute the bathing or the skin application of the skin product for the owner. But they don't know what's going on with the skin. They don't know what's safe. That, there's been times I put a force dry on a dog that I'm like, this should not be aspirated. I don't know what's on this dog's skin. I don't need to be making it airborne. Absolutely. What do we do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because, if you're dealing with skin problems, it's a whole nother situation. And a lot of groomers take for granted skin problems, lumps, bumps, ooey-gooeys, smells, itching, those are all potentially infections. And so we need to be aware of. And the other thing is, if you're going to deal with skin problems, just because you're great at putting a beautiful clip on it does not make you an authority on skin. You need to get some extra education. And to me, and there again, I come from a very biased standpoint, is you really shouldn't be doing a groom until you understand the hair and skin. I always liken it. It's like a mechanic that's going to work on a car, but he doesn't even know how the engine runs. You've got to know what the bases are to be able to do the other. Otherwise, you're just going through a motion that may or may not be helpful for the overall health of the dog on that. There's very little education on products out there. And so a lot of times we're using the wrong products and don't understand it. But if you understand product use and use the right products at the right time, then you're going to get good results. So much of the time I see dogs with skin infections, somebody puts it on Facebook and everybody's recommending their favorite shampoo. Well, that doesn't necessarily work. I mean, I can have a cold and take a birth control pill. That's not going to help me. We got to make sure that we've got the right product for the given situation. And so we have to have an understanding of the what's going on.
I'm definitely going to use that in the future. That's a good one. Yeah. Cause I don't understand human hair stuff. And I think Pantene is great. And of course, you mentioned that to someone at a salon and they all cringe, cause they have had that course and education and that stuff. And I know your company makes very, very detailed line of products. And then obviously you have education based on it as well. You have, as far as I know, the only education on skin and coat, certification that's out there. Is that right?
There's other ones. I think what's unique to ours is I say it's more of a clinical course. So when you go through our course, we try to teach you, when you see this, you do that. We can talk about all the diseases, but we also have to have a fix. And I tell people, for success, you basically need three things. You need to understand the science of what's going on. You need to use the right techniques, and you need to use the right products. Products are just a tool. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the products that we miss the other two. And that's where the birth control and where the cold comes in. You got to make sure the products match, but also technique matters a lot too, because anywhere from how we prep the product to, the order that we do things. Like I'll give you an example. A common place that we deal with is short-haired dogs. And a lot of times they will come in and the groomer will bathe them with shampoo, and then a lot of times condition them, and then they send them home. Well, if you understand that the conditioners have oils and what's called greases in there, they actually break down the old dried up sebum on that. So if you shampoo, it actually will tend to dry the coat just a little. So you dry that sebum out, then you condition it, which basically liquefies it, and the sebum is what's holding the hair in. So what we did is we shampooed, conditioned, released the hair, and then we send them home. And then we wondered why clients complain that they shed all the way home and they shed for the next 3 days. And it's because of our technique. We can take that same dog and condition first, break up that sebum, take it off in the shampoo stage, and then put some, I always say, happy conditioner on to go home. And that we're going to drop most of the hair in the salon, not on the way home or the other places. Same thing with the de-shed. If you do the technique right, you should drop most of your hair in the tub. You don't need to be pulling hair and ripping them apart before you start. You let the products do the work, drop it in the tub, and you're going to have a minimum of blowing around the salon after you're done, or a minimum on the brush out on that. In fact, groomers tell me they'll get as much as 90% of the hair out, 95% of the hair out in the tub, which is much easier to deal with wet hair versus one of the comments you made earlier. When you start hitting them with that forced air dryer, if there's any bacteria, dead skin, dead hair, you're breathing it in. And that's what groomer's lungs all about. Not to mention some of the other things that you can get associated with just the infection part of it.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to shamelessly plug my brush that I have. So this is the brush that I use to de-shed. This is the brush that I actually sell and was designed by myself and a veterinarian. But when I have people see me use conditioner as a degreaser, because I do house call grooming, it's very funny. And I just have to explain, well, oil removes oil. And then they get it. Sometimes they get it at that point just by that statement. But between doing that, using the right products, and doing something like this allows me to do shedding dogs in someone's home to a certain extent, right? Because no matter what, when you blow it, the rest is going to come out and whatever. But small dogs that shed, like Frenchies and things like that, we can get all that out in the tub with this gentle sort of massage. This is a curry style brush, right, that we designed. I should leave a link below. It's for sale. This one's just really ergonomic, and it's got longer nubs in the middle than on the outside. So as you do this, it doesn't dig in as much. You're not going so harsh and ripping on coat, just neck to tail, no backwards, things like that. But yeah, with the right products, it just slides right out. And their coat is just a dream after that.
And I'm going to clarify one word, because this is one of my, I'll call it pet peeve, is degreasing versus basically breaking down your sebum. When you degrease, you're removing all the sebum on that. And that's where we get into a lot of our problems with our skin issues, because that sebum is important. And I tell people, I've got some of the best products in the world, but I would rather replace this much sebum than this much sebum on that. Because when you take all that sebum down, now we're going to have to replace it. And no matter how good the product is, it's never as good as Mother Nature. We're all trying to find that perfect product. And like I say, I think we come close, but I want to remove that much. So everybody likes to degrease. I mean, probably still the #1 product used across the US. I talked to a lot of groomers. I've walked into the shops that looks like a shopping center for Dawn dishwashing soap. We're degreasing them and we're creating problems. And, a lot of times, if I had to describe the average dog that I deal with a skin problem, it usually starts at the grooming shop. And we're either using harsh products on there, and a lot of times just shampooing, we're not conditioning, or we're shampooing and conditioning, but we're using more emollients versus humectants, which actually hydrate the skin. So what happens in 3 to 4 days, if not straight out of the grooming shop, the dogs are itching. So after a while, the client gets tired of it. They run to the veterinarian. Now, a lot of times the groomer doesn't get blamed for that because it's far enough out that the veterinarian doesn't realize that that might be a problem. And the veterinarian looks at it and he diagnoses allergies. Now, allergies is a diagnosis of elimination. There is no definitive test for that show that allergies are what's causing the itching of the dog. Now, I can run tests to figure out what they may be allergic to, but that doesn't mean that's the cause of it today on that. So they back into this diagnosis. Now, one of the biggest problems that we have is veterinarians don't put dry skin on the list of possibilities for why they're itching. And so they jump to allergies. And so the first thing they do is Apoquil, antibiotics, and chlorhexidine. Now, if you know anything about the products, Apoquil suppresses the immune system, and it's a great anti-inflammatory. And if we've got inflammation, it's a good drug to use. But it's not meant to be a lifetime thing. It's a Band-Aid. It's a quick fix to kind of get ahead of things. Antibiotics used long-term, you're going to get yeast infections. So a lot of times these dogs start off with a low-grade bacterial problem, end up in a yeast infection. Key point, yeast and bacteria are in competition. You wipe out one, you're going to get the other. If you treat for yeast and not bacteria, you're going to get a bacterial problem. So you have to treat both of them at the same time if you're going to solve the problem. Chlorhexidine, great antibacterial, antifungal. But you groomers that have used it, you know exactly what that does to your hands. It dries and it's very irritating. So I'm going to take an itchy dog and I'm going to put a product on there that makes it dry and itchy. So I may kill the bacteria and fungus, but I did not do anything that's going to help on the long term, because as soon as I quit that, then the dry itchiness is going to come back on that. So we've used 3 treatments on that and none of them address the main problem. So what's going to happen in a couple of weeks to a couple of months, they're going to go back to the veterinarian, still itching. A lot of times you'll see right in the record, smells like yeast. And what do? More Apoquil, a different antibiotic, and say bathe more frequently with chlorhexidine. So literally in 2 appointments, we've created a lifetime therapy on that dog. It never goes away. I mean, true allergies is, we think of inhalant allergies should be seasonal. They're allergic to something in the environment typically. Now, you can have dust mites, you can have some of those other things, but if you look at the average, it should be seasonal. And if you've noticed in the last probably 10 years, they've become year-round on that. We always talk about it getting worse, and the reason it's getting worse is we're not addressing the problem. The problem was dry skin. In my own practice, what I did is, good skin workup, back in the day, and I'm sure it's gone up now, is $500 to $1,000. I mean, if you're going to do it right, you need to culture, you need to run blood work, you need to do that stuff. So you're going to spend some money. And what I was doing is I was doing that. And that's when a groomer brought in the product line on that. And I was doing it. But then when I get everything done, I would send them to the groomer to solve the problem. When reality is, I realized that I've got this backwards. So what I ended up doing later in my career is I stopped doing the major workups. I would run blood work to rule out some of the major things. And then I'd send them to the grooming salon for 3 baths to see if we saw improvement. Now, we don't usually fix them in 3 baths, but we saw improvement. If I did, then we just saved the client $500 to $1,000. If we didn't, then we may do a further workup because we may have something deeper. But that's where I want to empower groomers. There's a lot of things you can do if you understand the science. I don't want people just willy-nilly claiming they know something and don't have any education to go behind it. I think it's important that you get that. That's why we have the pet esthetician program. And I'm going to tell you, those that have graduated from our program, I'll make one guarantee. And that is, when you get done with our program, you will be fixing dogs that the veterinarians and dermatologists are struggling with. And it's a real easy concept because we treat from the outside in. And that's where the veterinarians missed the boat. We weren't taught products. We don't, chlorhexidine, they always give us a study that says 4% chlorhexidine in a Petri dish kills bacteria and fungus. And that's great. But then you put it in a shampoo and put it on the skin and you get a little different result on that. So Some of the treatments of the veterinary side, just, a dilute Clorox solution, we're going to spray on the dog daily for 12 days. I mean, anybody that has any common sense is going to say that's going to be a problem, but that's something that's a commonplace out there. Does it work for killing fungus? Yeah.
This podcast is mainly meant for, customers to be listening to. And I feel like customers have been in this loop for a long time. If they have a dog with any kind of skin issue, is trying to figure out what it is. And most of them get sent down the rabbit hole of, is it food? Is it environmental? Right. And it costs a lot of money to go down that rabbit hole, as well as it's very, very, very confusing for people that their vet might not have the full answers on that. And it's very confusing when the vet doesn't maybe know that they don't have all the answers on that. This weird gray area of, and then unfortunately the groomers don't always know as well what I personally think they should know about these things, which is why it's great that your program does exist. I think that the average person would think that both parties, both a groomer and a vet, have taken something like your course and had that level of education on skin and coat. And the fact is that the majority haven't. It's this weird little pocket, this weird little hole in the industry that seems like it's something that we focus on, especially groomers. You don't necessarily go to your dermatologist and talk about how to make your hair shiny or whatnot. I don't know human dermatologists, how great they are with that too. I would assume they're pretty good, but again, everyone assumes that XYZ professionals know everything about XYZ topic. And this is a little bit of a hole in our industry where both parties as a whole, there's a lot of lacking in information. And I don't think that it's that tough of information to digest. I think something like your course has been great. And it's not that I'm on here just like hardcore promoting your course. I've taken it. I love it. I think it's great. And I would promote it, but it's not even about that. It's that it is shockingly empty, this little hole that we have in the industry, especially versus the extremity of the problem. This is something that so many people face. This is a huge issue that it's still strange. And I think the average customer, as much as they spend on their dog and how popular dogs are these days, just would not imagine that this is why this is a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I actually had the opportunity to serve on a board with probably the top 10 dermatologists in the country. There was 3 of us, shall we call them lay people, that just had a special interest in the skin. And it was interesting sitting on that board and listening to them, because there was a lot of times I really wanted to just tell them they need to read their own books, because they're not necessarily following the science, because we've been led down this process. It's like you always say, you don't know what you don't know. And if you've never gotten into cosmetics or dealing with the products, then you don't know the benefit from it. And I think the general feel out there, and this is across the board between clients, groomers, and veterinarians, is, shampoo is a shampoo is a shampoo, a conditioner is a conditioner is a conditioner. And that's not the case. There's totally different products out there. And if you think that you're going to get a great product at a real inexpensive price, you miss the boat, because it really comes down to the sourcing of the ingredients. And it's like I was working with one of the top veterinarians. They were doing trying to do a wound ointment with CBD in it. And we come to, talking about honey. Honey is one of those things a lot of times we hear is very therapeutic. Well, there's 20 different grades of honey, from, literally sweep the floor all the way up to something that's therapeutic. So when we say honey, a lot of times people run down to the store and buy some food grade honey and put it on the dog. Well, food grade is really kind of low on that level. We got a digestive tract that kills a lot of things. You wouldn't want to necessarily put that same product on your face, but yet we have all the time that people will go down and buy coconut oil or olive oil and food grade, and because it's cheap, and use it as a cosmetic. So, I think that's an area that we're really lacking across the board on that. And once you start understanding that, you come away with a different way of thinking. And
thanks for listening to A Brief Pause, and make sure to listen to the next episode to continue our conversation with Dr. Faver.